Special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and Fridays with Frank with our co-host Paul Hollis, author of the Hollow Man series, owner of Hollow Man Publishing, and Frank Fiore. Frank, what's going on, man? How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
This is up your alley, right?
Yeah, I
You
love
know.
his.
All right. So we have acclaimed Fordham Law School professor Charles Moxley on the program. His new book, Nuclear Weapons and International Law. Charles, this could be 16 different segments with you. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Neil.
I start thinking about this and I'll let Frank, throw in with the 79th anniversaries of Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings, the movie that came out, talking about the atomic bomb and all these different things is a perfect time to talk about it. And the scariness that there's certain parts in our world today that literally want to annihilate us, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a very real risk.
Totally. All right, Frank, nail your first question for Charles.
Well, it's been like decades since the bombings. What do the Japanese think about this now?
You know, I was over in Hiroshima in early June, and I spoke at the Peace Academy they have in Hiroshima. And one thing that struck me is walking through that museum they have, that displays all the damage. There was school group after school group. They have maintained an effort to have a public awareness of it. It's absolutely extraordinary. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of students walking through group after group. But you know what? I think as a country, they're kind of schizophrenic because Japan is under the U.S. nuclear umbrella. And so they're accepting the potential use. But on the other hand, there are a lot of anti-nuclear folks there. I saw something, I think just in the last couple of days, I think it was a mayor of Nagasaki or some prominent political leader over there, very anti-nuclear. So, it's a mixed bag.
No, definitely it is. And what, Charles, from writing this book, are you concerned now with so much hatred again towards the United States right now and how North America could be attacked anytime soon? It could happen.
I'm concerned, Neil, but I would take my greatest level of concern back to something different. You all will remember the Gang of Four Wall Street Journal articles really decades ago by Kissinger and others who had been in these high positions. And all of a sudden now they're saying nuclear weapons are useless. And I think this is the point, Neil, that nuclear weapons are now the problem, that they are, in a real sense, a greater problem than any challenge or any enemy that we have otherwise.
That's deep in so many ways because you never know. So go ahead, Paul. Do you have a question for Charles?
Um, I I guess it's more of interest than a question, but my father was a Marine in the Second World War, and he actually walked through Hiroshima about a week after the bomb fell. Uh, when it was all kind of going there, he said there weren't two bricks standing on top of each other. And so I was just kind of marveling at the spectacle of how powerful a nuclear weapon is. And I mean, I'm not sure that a lot of people kind of understand how powerful they are. So,
Yeah, I think that's the issue, really, because the weapons dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were in the range of 17 to 20 kilotons. The typical, ones we have now in the U.S. arsenal are 300 or 400 kilotons or more, and we've had like megatons, and the Russians have megaton nuclear weapons. So absolutely, I mean, it's mind-boggling, but it's worse than that, Paul. It's worse than that. There was a study, I think it was in August of 2022. It was a group that was led by Alan Robach, who is a very knowledgeable guy. You guys maybe might find it interesting talking to him, but he was part of a group of, I don't know, 12 or 13 scientists who did a study on the effects if you had an all-out nuclear war now between the U.S. and Russia. Uh, what do you think their number was on the number of deaths that would come from a war like that?
Wow.
How
I think
many?
almost everybody, right?
Yeah, 5 billion.
5 million.
Billion.
Billion. Yeah.
5 billion. And what's the Earth? 7 or 8 billion, depending on what projection you go by, for the near future.
Because that nuclear will go all over the place. It won't just go into the areas that they attacked. It's going to affect the entire world. The
Yeah,
entire globe.
what it is, the way this works, and I'm the legal guy, not the scientist, but I've read all this stuff. The way it works is if you have a number of these nuclear weapons exploding near ground level, they're going to blow up so much dirt and debris and smoke, they blot out the sun. So really, the billions of people who would die from a wide scale nuclear war would be from starvation. There'd be no food throughout a good part of the world.
Let me ask you about the MAD, the mutual assured destruction. That worked because the holders at the time, they have a certain level of ethics. But now you're having the threat of more players coming in that may not have that level, and that MAD may not really work. That really they just think that they should use the nuclear weapons to advance their particular religious or whatever. So as the new players come in, do you think that's going to affect MAD?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge risk, and I think, Frank, you've put your finger on the sort of the problem in the broadest way of looking at it, because really for two reasons. I don't think it was as much ethics back during the Cold War as it was a sense of survival, right? Mutual assured destruction is if you attack us, we will destroy you totally. It will be, and so that exerted a restraint, right? Because unlike terrorists, right? I mean, you can have an irrational leader of a country, obviously, but generally countries are going to be there. They're not going to disappear. They don't want to die. And so you're going to have a level of rationality, but I think that the heightened change now, even more than during the Cold War, is the technology. It's crazy. How much time would you all think, according to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and our military experts, the president would have if the word came in that, hey, there's missile attacks coming into us? How much time would the president have to make a decision whether to release our weapons? What would you think?
A few
2 seconds.
Yeah,
Huh.
it's like 10 to 20 minutes is what is.
10 to 20. Okay. Almost like we all remember war games. This is all I think about. And I had the guy who on my show, and I forget his name, that was the one, he says he was the one about to call the president, with he's been in so many different movies and different things. And I asked him that question. And he said, and it's so known, but people remember war games. When a total nuclear war happens, it's the worst. But yet now people are speaking about this again. When we went through the whole Cold War, eliminating all these weapons, now people are building them back up again or getting them from somewhere else. And it's, when you think of total war, every war has ended in total war in some sort of way, big wars. Now, atomic bomb is a little different than a nuclear bomb. A nuclear bomb is going to just destroy civilization as we know it. How can, as world leaders, tell each other, we can't do this? Is Russia willing to do it, in your opinion? Do you think that Putin would push the button to end the world, or does he care more about world domination and money?
Yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate question. I think a thing that's happened, certainly in the U.S. population, and that was a thing that was striking when I was in Hiroshima a month and a half ago, was they're keeping the awareness up. But I've taught this stuff at Fordham Law School for over 20 years. And we have these brilliant young students with great college backgrounds and all. But I can get a sense from them. And then I have young children, who are in their 20s. the level of consciousness or awareness that we have, it's different now, right? I mean, think of your kids, and it's just. I was talking about this with my wife before I came in, came into this discussion, and she was saying when she was a kid, as a little girl, she knew of this during the Cold War. She knew of this risk, but I think we've lost the sense of the risk. It receded from our consciousness. And on your question, Neil, what's happened with the decision makers? And I think if you had interviews, I'm sure you have, with leaders of our country in big positions.
I wish that happened. I mean, I've gotten to the level of been on the cabinet of President Trump. That's as high as I've gone. No, I wish I could. If you have the hookup, let me know. But no, I've gotten to talk to some pretty big leaders in the country, but they don't talk about it either.
Yeah,
It's
I
true.
think I think the answer to your question is, would Putin do it? Or
I don't think Putin would do it. I think North Korea would do it. I think that the Middle East would do it, because they're looking at more of a holy war versus Putin, who is just about is more of a tyrant that wants everything, wants complete all the money, all the, his glitz and glamour that he has. And I don't think he would want his life to end, because once you push the button, it's over.
I think I tend to have the same, conclusion that I don't think he would do it. But here's the risk, Neil, as I perceive it. The policy leaders and the military, they've kind of separated out low yield from high yield. And it's not crazy in my mind to think that Putin and the people around him, if anybody has any influence on him, might think, we can get away with the low yield, and so that becomes the problem of, what that would lead to, as you
Right.
say.
I'm concerned more of a holy war versus anything. Go ahead, Frank, with your question.
Yeah, we're talking strategic, but you talked about upper and lower levels. We're talking about tactical nuclear weapons. I was in the Army. I've had in tactical nuclear weapons that my group did, but it seems to me that the use of tactical nuclear weapons, low yield, is more attractive to the military today, saying, "Well, we're not going to get it up to strategic level." Now, what are your thoughts on that? How quickly do you think that Putin use tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield? How quickly would that thing, you think, evolve into a strategic exchange of the nuclear weapons?
Yeah, I think, Frank, that is kind of the pivotal question, and it relates back, Neil, to your question of what's the likelihood. If you look at the U.S. nuclear arsenal, here's a strange fact: we don't have many low yield. Our theory on lawfulness is, they're lawful because we can control the effects, because low yield ones aren't so bad, they aren't so indiscriminate. But of our thousands of nuclear weapons, we have 100 that are deployed, and they're in Western Europe with NATO. But on your thing, Paul, Neil, what would Russia do? They have a different strategy. They have thousands of low yield. So the thing that worries me, my sense, like yours, is that Putin is ahead of a country and he doesn't want to be destroyed. And he knows that it high likelihood would happen were he to start the thing. But I'm concerned that he or others there may have drunk the Kool-Aid. On Frank's point, maybe the low yields aren't so bad,
See, and I'm not familiar with low yield, and that shows Frank's intelligence that I did not have. Paul, any other questions? I always want to, me and this conversation, we'll continue it till our next guest arrives, as we do this Fridays with Frank every Friday. We have about 3 or 4 amazing guests, but go ahead, Paul, with another question.
No, just a fascinating discussion. I appreciate you being here, Charles. Very interesting.
So, Charles, holy war. Let's go with Israel, Palestine, the whole entire Middle East. Could you, what if a nuclear war broke out between Israel and all the Middle East? What would happen?
To be honest, Neil, I mean, I don't see that. I agree that when you have irrational and you have holy war motivation, it raises the risk. But I don't see, I'm less concerned with that than with Ukraine, because the only country in the Middle East now, that has nuclear is Israel. They wouldn't have to use them because the U.S. would give them all the conventional weapons they needed. And here's a cool fact that I think your listeners will be astonished to hear. We don't, from the United States perspective, we don't need nuclear weapons anymore. We've gotten, unlike during the Cold War, where we let ourselves be secondary to the Soviets, we have hegemony, on conventional. And we've gotten so accurate. I mean, we can put a conventional weapon through a goalpost any place in the world within less than an hour. I mean, it's amazing. So I think, quite frankly, that we and Russia are the problem. But I agree, the volatility of the Middle East, who knows what happens
or at least a nuclear weapon could be shot into the United States that causes lots of casualties and nuclear. That's my concern adding it. So best place, Charles, we can purchase your book and learn more about you. I know it's available in all different finer bookstores, but where's best place?
You can buy it anywhere. You can go on Amazon. You can go to Rowman and Littlefield Publishers, to their website.
Awesome. And then do you have a website, Charles?
Yes, it's nuclearweaponslaw.org. Nuclearweaponslaw.org.
You're so fascinating, and I appreciate you thinking I've interviewed all the world leaders. You have to set that up for me. I'm ready to interview any of them. I've just not gotten that opportunity. I've never had a former president yet, but that's because I'm staying right in my basement or in my studio. Now it's not a basement, but it's a game room instead of getting out in the world to interview people. But I've interviewed a lot of fascinating people, but never a president. And I'm sure you have in a way. You've met presidents, haven't you?
No, I haven't done that. But you know what I have been doing is I've been trying to get dialogue with our military leadership in the nuclear weapons era. And I've run 2 conferences, one late last year, which was co-sponsored by the Air Force Academy. And we had leading speakers, on the policy of deterrence from within the military. So I'm trying to foster a dialogue to raise a level of consciousness on this issue. So as you say, we can begin to address it on a policy level and a political level.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Charles. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and Fridays with Frank.